Hello, I'm Randy Swallow. Welcome to our special program. We're discussing mosquitoes and arboviral diseases, including the Zika virus and the West Nile virus. Eliminating the threat of these and other transmittable health disease is a full-time job for many people. We've assembled a stellar collection of experts in the field who want you and your family to be safe this summer. Let's meet them.
Vivek Raman with the Southern Nevada Health District. I'm Environmental Health Supervisor looking after the Vector Surveillance Program.
My name is Linda Verchick. I'm with the Southern Nevada Health District. I'm a Disease Surveillance Supervisor, and I protect the city, Clarke County, against communicable disease.
I am Drew Hunter with Clarke, and I cover the states of Nevada, Oregon, and Utah.
Chris Bramley, Clarke County Vector Control Supervisor in the Department of Public Works, and we supervise the abatement process for unincorporated Clarke County in mosquito surveillance and control.
This truly is a team effort. I know I've worked with you, Vivek, and obviously Chris, you in Vector Control. That's two different agencies working together. We brought in a third agency, an outside consultant, a gentleman from Oregon through Illinois company, to combat this problem or to get our arms around it. Why do we have this team effort, Vivek?
Mosquitoes don't know jurisdictional boundaries, and so it really requires a multidisciplinary team to look at where mosquitoes are breeding. So that why it involves the health district on both the field side as well as the disease surveillance side with Linda, working with Chris and his counterparts, as well as all the other jurisdictions in Clarke County. And then we work with Clarke Mosquito Control or Management to help guide some of our control efforts and surveillance efforts.
It is Clarke with an E,
Yes.
your website, and that's what your company is, a national company. And you have expertise across the country, maybe across the globe in things like this.
We are a global public health company, and our goal is to work with mosquito abatement districts and folks that are dealing with aquatic habitats. And we deal in products and services to work with mosquito abatement districts in any way we can.
How did you get involved here at Clarke County? Why did they hire you and your company?
So I've known Vivek for a couple of years, and they recently requested that they bring in basically a third party to do a program assessment of the vector control group. And so currently we're working with Vivek and his staff, identifying gaps, and also helping them develop a 5-year plan to increase the capacity and the effectiveness of the overall vector control program.
Linda, these are arboviral diseases. What does that mean?
An arboviral disease is a disease that is actually transmitted by an arthropod vector. And there are many arthropods. The ones most common in Clarke County that can transmit disease are mosquitoes. The diseases that are transmitted by mosquitoes, the arboviruses, there are others also, but in Clarke County we have a few arboviruses that are transmitted here locally. And so it's so important for us to have the mosquito surveillance as well as the human surveillance so we can identify which diseases are circulating in our community.
I think people maybe have an idea about Zika, or they've heard of what the Zika virus is, what the West Nile virus is, maybe not the St. Louis encephalitis so much, but these are then arboviral diseases. Talk about them a little bit if you will.
Arboviral diseases are transmitted by mosquitoes, these particular diseases, West Nile, St. Louis, and Zika. Zika virus is not transmitted in Clarke County, so anybody with Zika virus would be getting that from an area that has Zika virus transmission ongoing. We do not have the mosquito vector for Zika virus, so we're not concerned at this time for the transmission of Zika virus in Clarke County. However, since 2003, we have had West Nile virus in our country, and it's transmitted across the United States, and it's reached Clarke County in 2004, and that's when we really started to see West Nile virus disease in Clarke County. And so we have surveillance efforts through our healthcare providers to test individuals that have symptoms consistent with West Nile virus or St. Louis encephalitis, which we had just identified last year in our community. So prior to that, we had not ever identified St. Louis encephalitis.
And Randy, what's very important for people to know is regardless of the disease or what particular mosquito it may be that transmits it, the prevention is all the same. Avoid mosquito breeding, take precautions against mosquito bites, and really avoid the disease.
Chris, I've worked with you many times over the years here, and it's like Come on, I come from Canada. Mosquito is like a state bird up there. I mean, there's no mosquitoes in Clarke County. Is that true?
No, I wish. No, Clarke County Vector Control's been in the mosquito abatement business for 40 years. We started the mosquito abatement program in Clarke County. We brought the first fish group out of Orange County here, the fish product that we use for a lot of our abatement programs. But I think the biggest part of the change in my department is that we're working with Vivek in the health district, where they're doing all of the surveillance. Since Vector Public Works can only work within our infrastructure, we can work with the health district on the private property issues. So they may get a call, I get a call, we send it to Vivek, they'd go out, do some surveillance, and he lets me know what they caught. Then I can send my crews out and around that neighborhood looking at our infrastructure, whether it be flood channels, street drop inlet drains, things of that nature, and make sure that we're not having a productive mosquito population in those segments. And then we can turn the people on to, hey, you have any standing water on your home? Green swimming pools, stagnant swimming pools, is your watering system messed up? So then we can give them, between the both of us, we can give them pamphlets, we can give them information, we can train them on how to manipulate their property to prevent those types of issues. So this partnership that Vivek and I have created over the last 5 years has been very successful. And now that Zika is a concern, we both have created a Zika surveillance program within our culture. So for the county, what I've done is with my staff, we've identified about 100 different types of drop inlets and street drains that I have special traps for, that we put traps in and check them overnight. So that's where we've moved our focus to, is those types of infrastructure projects that could eventually one day house the Aedes mosquitoes.
Vivek, tell me a little bit more about your surveillance program and how it works with Chris, and what I also read where you've trapped 150,000 mosquitoes in the past decade or so. Where do they end up, and how we learn from those mosquitoes?
That's right, Randy. So the health district maintains a very active mosquito surveillance program through the breeding season, which we look at typically April through the end of September. That's when we're actively surveying mosquitoes. So for example, last year we set over 1,200 mosquito traps, all the way from Mesquite down to Laughlin, and a lot of trapping as well as urban Clarke County. And so setting traps tells us really what kind of mosquitoes are we finding, and then what are the disease status of those mosquitoes, so that we can then work with the community to educate, as well as our jurisdictional counterparts to let them know, hey, we've identified a potential problem here. Can you please get your resources out to help us find where that might be coming from so we can stop it? In that collaboration, definitely with Chris Bramley and Clarke County Vector Control, but also we have jurisdictional counterparts in all 6 different municipalities. And so that's a very important part of the program as well.
So again, we get these 150,000 mosquitoes.
Right.
Somehow then, Linda, I assume you take over maybe at this point to spread the word as far as any community problems or issues like that?
Well, we work with the information that we receive from our vector surveillance counterparts at the health district, and we're looking for cases of disease. So we're constantly surveilling, receiving reports from healthcare providers, and if we do receive a report of a West Nile virus or a Zika virus or a St. Louis encephalitis, then that report then gets investigated by our office, and we initiate an investigation through our vector surveillance program to go to that person's area and to conduct surveillance right in that area to find out if there are mosquitoes specific to that area that individual lives. And so we're waiting for the reports from the healthcare community. So otherwise we would not know if a person was ill. Another thing is we work with our public information officer. So if we do get a case, then that information not only goes to our environmental health counterpart, but our public information office, to where they can now set up a press release to inform the community that we've identified particular illness in our area.
Now, Drew, I know Clarke, your company, was on the forefront in Miami last year, where there was a Zika outbreak, and also in Dallas with the West Nile outbreak in 2012. What can we learn from Clarke County from the work you've done in those other jurisdictions?
I think a lot of it is being prepared. What happened in Miami-Dade took a huge amount of resources, both people and dollars. And while they did a very good job of preparing for it, we never really knew day to day what was going to happen or what was going to be required. So it is about preparation, surveillance, working with public information offices to make sure that they have the proper messaging for the public.
That messaging obviously is very important. About this time last year, everyone was gearing up for the Olympics in Brazil, and people were scared off. Athletes were scared off and wouldn't go to Brazil. Talk a little bit more.
It's really about personal protection. Mosquito repellents are very, very effective. So that's really number one. And if you're living here in Clarke County, it's about reducing sources. Anything that holds water should be dumped and drained and taken away. If you can do that, you would greatly limit the potential for the mosquitoes to develop.
Chris, you touched on the Gambizi fish, I believe it is. Are we still using those mosquito eaters?
They're a big component of my program, and one of the neat things is with our water reclamation division, they've given me a room with 16 250-gallon tanks where we're able to raise our own fish now. In the beginning, some 40 years ago, when we brought the fish from Orange County, we had a pool in our backyard. Well, we've since lost that with as we've grown. So I got Water Rec, Marty Flynn and his staff were kind enough to allow us to take over a room that they had used for their fish program that they were no longer using. So now we're able to start breeding our own fish, raising them early. Where they're available to the public. They can call the office. We can, give them fish for ponds and things in their yards. And that's really good because I'm able to augment the cost of my abatement program because, as Drew will tell you, these products are very expensive. And so I'm able to use fish as a cheaper way, and they work just as well. And so far this year, I've already put out about 25,000 fish in different areas throughout the county. And the good thing about these standing water areas is the county has grown. We've eliminated most of them. From when I started many years ago, there were many of them, to where now they're small and few. And since my staff knows where ours are, we maintain them. Vivek holds a surveillance program, plus his staff works with mine. So if they go out and do some trapping in an area, I get a report, and then we can turn our staff onto it. But we try and use fish first before we use any kind of chemical treatments. But the fish are great. We're working with Mojave County right now and getting them to set up their surveillance and abatement program. We're moving fish into the Avi Golf Course, the ponds that are out there. So the Indian tribe out there, they're working with Mojave County and Bullhead City Pest Abatement District and Clarke County. We've put a program in place for them. So, the advent of Zika and the fears that are coming maybe down the road in the future, maybe not, have made us all, redouble our efforts and create a much better program than we've ever had.
We must take a short break, but when we come back, we'll continue our discussion on mosquitoes and arboviral disease. This is Clarke County Television.
Ladies and gentlemen, there's no secret to this next trick. Hard hat, check. Tank, check. Building permit, uh-oh. Never fear, Magic fans. They're in here somewhere. Voila! But don't try this at home. There's no secret to building permits. Even I need them.
Green pools are a breeding ground for mosquitoes, which carry potentially serious diseases like West Nile virus. If you have a green pool in your neighborhood, contact your local code enforcement office. For unincorporated Clarke County, the phone number is 455-4191. When you call, we'll drain the pool and remove the threat. Protect your family. Report green pools.
If you're up to your eyeballs in paper, inhibiting your vision and productivity, you may be suffering from shred head. Clear your desk, clear your head, and clear your clutter. Walk-in shredding is now available. Get organized today with the Opportunity Village Paper Pros, trusted as one of Nevada's largest document destruction companies. Good for your community, good for you. For more information, visit paperproslv.com. That's paperproslv.com.
Welcome back to our special program. We're talking about mosquitoes and arboviral diseases in Clarke County with vector control and other experts. Linda, obviously we're not immune to any of these arboviral diseases. In fact, our first human case of West Nile virus in Clarke County of 2017 occurred just recently, a 50-year-old man. Talk a little bit about that, what that means to you, what that should mean to the community.
Well, that is something that's a sentinel incident for us here in Clarke County, and we sent individuals out there. They are surveillance community or surveillance investigators from environmental health to trap around his house, and they did trap mosquitoes. So far in Clarke County, we haven't identified it in mosquitoes, but we do have a case. So it is sometimes difficult to find those mosquitoes that are actually infected with the virus that will pass it on to humans. This case that we have, it took a while before we could identify that it was actually West Nile virus, because now that we have St. Louis encephalitis, the test that identifies either St. Louis or West Nile cross-react with one another, so we have to send it for confirmation to the CDC to determine whether or not it was St. Louis or West Nile, because the majority of what we had last year was St. Louis encephalitis. And so that raised the awareness, raised the flag, say, hey, we have our first case now here in Clarke County. That individual did not travel, so we know that it has acquired here in Clarke County. And now the efforts are probably even more intense to try to identify if we have any pools of mosquitoes that are infected with West Nile or St. Louis encephalitis.
Last year, I believe there were 2 reported West Nile cases and 3 cases of St. Louis encephalitis. Vivek, what type of mosquitoes are those coming from? And I guess, is that a good number? Are we getting better then, or are we satisfied with these numbers?
Well, the fact is, Randy, every year since 2004, we have found disease in mosquitoes and or human cases, with the exception of 2010, was kind of an anomaly. So knowing that we find these illnesses in our community, we have to take the precautionary measures to avoid mosquito breeding and mosquito biting. Now, when you speak about specific mosquito species, so believe it or not, there's 17 different types of mosquitoes that call Clarke County home. Now, there's a few of those that are disease transmitters, meaning that they are ideal for spreading West Nile. West Nile is in the bird. The bird is a natural reservoir of that virus. So an unaffected mosquito has to bite a bird that has the virus, and then also that mosquito has to bite a person. So not all mosquitoes like to feed on birds, and not all mosquitoes like to feed on people. So that's why knowing what type of mosquitoes we're finding is very important. The type that does transmit West Nile and St. Louis encephalitis likes to feed on both birds and people, and therefore it is very important that we protect against those specific type of mosquitoes.
How is Clarke helping in this effort, Drew?
Well, we do advise groups such as Vivek's vector control program on products and services. So I think part of the benefit is having Clarke, we kind of have national exposure and national experience, so we kind of see what's going on in other parts of the country. We see what's working well, maybe not working as good, and we can bring those ideas to Vivek's group and help him increase his surveillance and success.
Chris, obviously you're more concerned with the jurisdiction of Clarke County. What are some of the hot breeding areas? What areas do we find mosquitoes generally in anywhere in the county specifically?
Actually, we find them in all aspects of unincorporated Clarke County, from Sandy Valley to Moapa to Laughlin, Searchlight. All of these places have some standing water, some ability to allow the mosquitoes to reproduce in. So my staff, each one of my staff has their own area. I pretty much survey the west side of town, and I've got staff that does the east and the south, and then we work in major problem areas like our flood channels. A lot of the flood channels have these little pockets, these little breeding areas. So all of these areas are surveilled about every 14 to 17 days. We go out and routinely check all these areas. But you know, from when I first started, how this part of town was with, you know, it was basically rural. There was nothing here, so there was a lot of standing water all over. But now we've developed, a lot of these places have developed and they're no longer problems. So we currently have 72 facilities that we check every month that maybe 40% are positive for mosquito activity. Some areas are pre-treated, some we put fish in. So we have to continually check these areas to make sure that we keep those populations under control. Plus the new areas that we may get from Vivek and his staff, like the West Nile case, if that's in the county and we have some areas and stuff in and around that residence, we go out and look around and make sure that we've got all of those, facilities, those types of drainage areas, local drainage areas, curb and gutters, things that hold water for 14 to 15 days that are all under control and that we're not allowing the mosquitoes to breed in them.
How about private property, Linda? Are they allowed to go out there and survey out there?
We get permission from the case, when we have a case, to trap on property. And so yes, they are allowed if they get permission from the case. But they can always set something up in the vicinity also if we don't have permission on property for that individual. Our vector surveillance group can decide to set up traps in some place that's close in vicinity.
I didn't realize there were so many different species of mosquitoes, like you said. Linda, are there any other arthropods that we're concerned about in Clarke County that could cause disease?
At the moment, no. We've been conducting surveillance for things like Lyme disease. Lyme disease is a tick-borne disease, and so far, all of the Lyme disease cases that we have done surveillance on have not been acquired in Clarke County. So we've never been able to directly associate a case with Clarke County. And we're constantly doing that, because if we do find a case and it looks like it was here in Clarke County, then we're definitely going to get our vector surveillance group out there so that we can now look to see if we have that tick that transmits Lyme disease. There's really not much else that is passed on by a vector in Clarke County.
I know, Vivek, we've touched on it a little bit, but what are things we can do around our home to help lessen the breeding grounds for mosquitoes?
Well, Randy, personal responsibility is a big part of the equation here in terms of what folks can do around their homes to protect themselves. We always talk about draining any standing water. So they can be large bodies of water like swimming pools. Residential pools that become neglected are fantastic breeders of mosquitoes, but they can also be very small sources like flower pot saucers that just fill with irrigation water, or tires that may fill from time to time with water. And so it's important that people look for different types of breeding sources and remove them. If that means draining a swimming pool, if, for example, your neighbor has a swimming pool, contact your local code enforcement agency. They have authority to go in and quickly remediate that problem. But then also comes down to bite prevention. For example, I find mosquitoes in my house at times, and I have pets that go in and out of doggy doors. I have screen doors that aren't closed as often as they should be. And it's really important that if you're noticing mosquitoes in your house, that you take precaution to avoid having them come in the first place. As well as mosquito repellents are a very important tool against bites. So using repellents, there's a variety of repellents. Our website talks about some that are DEET-based as well as some that are more organic based products, as well as covering up with lightweight clothing so that if you're out at dusk and dawn when mosquitoes are most active, that you have coverage on your skin to avoid bites.
Drew, coming from different parts of the country, are people here just less knowledgeable about mosquitoes and things like that, do you think?
I think part of it is just your climate and the heat and the fact that people just aren't outside as much as other parts of the country. For example, with Miami-Dade, with the Zika issues, people are used to the heat and the humidity there. They're out at all hours of the day. So it's that human contact with mosquitoes, that's what really caused that problem to amp up. So I think part of it is just being in an arid desert climate, and you're likely not to go outside here until well after the mosquitoes have quieted down.
Vivek, when people find out what you do, that you work with mosquitoes and things like that, they must ask a lot of the same questions, or you must have to debunk myths about mosquitoes and different diseases here in Clarke County. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, mosquitoes are really fascinating little creatures. I mean, in fact, no creature on Earth has caused more misery and death among human beings than mosquitoes and the diseases they transmit. You know, one thing that's very important to recognize is that it's female mosquitoes are the ones that bite because they need the protein in your blood to help develop their eggs. And so it's not all mosquitoes that bite. And when we trap mosquitoes, you can quickly tell the males versus the females and know that you're closer to a breeding source when you trap more male mosquitoes. So that's, that's a very interesting thing that just trapping allows us to tell, is how close are we to a potential breeding source.
And Drew, what is the potential for any future major disease outbreaks here in Clarke County, in your opinion?
Anything is possible. As far as in regards to Zika, since we do not have that invasive species here at this time, I don't think there's really much concern about local transmission of Zika. I do think that people should be aware of what Vivek and his staff are doing and telling them when it comes in regards to West Nile virus and St. Louis encephalitis, because there's very real opportunity for that to be transmitted here.
And Chris, finally, if someone's watching this or they see what they think are some mosquitoes as they're walking their dog or around their house or in a public location, some of the locations which you just mentioned, what should they do?
Well, I think the first thing they need to do is call us, 702-455-7543. They can call. We'll start the investigation for them. Depending on where they're at, we have staff that work in our parks that do mosquito abatement work. We have my staff. If it turns out to be an area that I don't cover, like I said, I work with Vivek and his crew. So the first thing they need to do is just call us and let us know. They can either call me, they can call Vivek, and we'll start the investigation for them, the surveillance, and work it down to where the breeding sites are, and then do the abatement work, whether it's done by us in our jurisdiction or if the private has to drain their area, or maybe they need to hire pest control service or something of that nature. But they just need to call. Just call. If they need fish for some kind of ornamental ponds, they can call. Like I said, we have a great facility for fish. Vivek and his staff even have fish at their facility. So, all they need to do is call, and we're there to help them any way we can.
Randy, I would like to speak one thing about, we talk about mosquito species and how trapping allows us to know what kind of mosquitoes we're looking at. The Zika virus mosquitoes, as we've talked about here, are two very specific types of mosquitoes that we have not yet found. However, they're in California, they're also in Arizona, so it's most likely a matter of time. What people need to recognize is these mosquitoes, their behavior is very specific, meaning that they like to bite people during the daytime, whereas a lot of the mosquitoes we talk about for West Nile or St. Louis are morning or evening biters. So if people notice mosquito activity during the daytime, that should be an alarm to, hey, let's call, like Chris was saying, and let's call it, start an investigation on that. And also, these mosquitoes prefer the small breeding sources called cryptic breeding sources, and not the large sources like swimming pools or wash channels, for example. So we have to really pay attention to reducing those very small sources in our own backyards.
Excellent. Thank you all for great information. I'll direct them to the Southern Nevada Health District's website also. Much appreciated. Thanks so much to all of our guests for participating in this discussion and for all the work they do for all of us in vector control and public health. For more information, I'll direct you to the Health District's website at southernnevadahealthdistrict.org. There you'll find many great links to websites that provide all the information you'll need about mosquitoes, West Nile, and so much more. I'm Randy Swallow. We'll see you again next time here on Clarke County Television.